Let's talk shop. So we've done 13 of these. I posted this morning that we've done almost 8.5 hours of internal training for Civic, which is part of a commitment to make sure that we are helping you guys have the tools and the competency and clarity to actually do the job. In this one, I'm going to talk about lateral leadership, which is based on a book that I'm going to describe. I'm going to both talk about the frame of the book, some of the individual concepts that are a little aside from the lateral leadership, but are in the book. And then I'm going to talk about how it applies to Civic. So what is the source material? So David Marquet wrote this book, Turn the Ship Around, primarily about his experiences from taking a nuclear submarine that he was assigned to. He had been intended to take one that was of a particular style, the USS Olympia, and then at the last minute was reassigned to take over the USS Santa Fe, which was in a similar class, but a different boat in several characteristics. That ship had been the last in terms of retention and operational standing within its command. So after being assigned, he knew how to run the Olympia. He had done a lot of study. And then when he's going to take over this other ship, which has different characteristics, he realized the traditional take control and give orders wasn't going to work. And so the book is basically about how he turned the ship around by treating the crew as leaders and building a leader culture and how to find ways to give control, not always taking control. And so his approach took the Santa Fe from worst to first in terms of highest retention and operational standing in the Navy at that time. So there is this concept of responsibility and control, and they're similar, but they're not the same, right? So when he is the captain of this ship, I'm pulling some quotes from the book. The responsibility for my command is absolute. The safety, well-being, effectiveness of the crew, and the fulfillment of the mission. The buck stops with the captain. And so he has the ultimate responsibility for the work. And then explores the fact that the barrier to giving away control is avoiding chaos. Chaos is bad, especially on a nuclear submarine. So the bridge from leader-follower to leader-leader is acting to divest control while keeping responsibility. And divesting control is supported by competency and clarity. People need to know how to do the work, and then they need to know what the overall direction of the captain and the officer of the day, et cetera, is, so that they can act in a way that is consistent with the overall direction and know what to do with it. So when you can have control that is distributed and supported by competency and clarity, the result is decision-making and unity of effort. And so his job as the commander was to tap into the existing energy of the command, discover the strengths, and remove the barrier to further progress. So in the first part of the book, he talks about a story that was very impactful on him and basically was the course of the book. So when he was a sonar operator on a previous stand, during a long, slow tour, there was a merchant ship on the horizon, and he thought out loud to himself that it would be helpful for practice to ping that ship with active radar, which was not something that they actively do. And so he sort of is musing that out loud. The captain was nearby, and the captain said, well, why don't you? And the unspoken answer is because it's done very rarely, and it takes the captain's permission to authorize active sonar. So the captain said, well, then why don't you just say, Captain, I intend to go active on sonar for training. So Marquet then quoted those words back to the captain, and the captain responded very well and left the command center. So then in the time, they started doing the active pinging. They did all kinds of different tests and variations. And he said, we cycled through everything we could think of. And then later he said, I spent my hours in my off time studying and dreaming up new ways of training for the team. So by actually not just simply saying, well, that's not done, by saying, here's what I intend to do and having permission, he was very engaged in what it was. And then it flowed afterwards into how he acted and how he thought about using the team. So just a simple action of being able to say, here's what I intend to do, so that then if the captain can either say, go forth and do, or go forth and do with this risk management characteristic, it mushrooms out and it opens out a whole new line of an ability to lead from your station. So the language that we use when we speak reflects the role that we will fulfill. And so the key for the team to becoming more proactive rests in the language that subordinates and superiors use, as a quote from the book. So on the left here, phrases like, I received this, I request permission to, what do you want me to do about? Those are certain types of words. And then to the right, I intend to, I plan to, and we should are different kind of words. And the words on the left are very low on the ladder of leadership in terms of it's reporting what you're seeing and what you're observing to someone else who will make a decision. And the words on the right are more actively engaged in terms of these are areas that here's what I'm seeing and here's what I would do that I think is consistent with the clarity of what we are supposed to be doing here. So that then it's a much more proactive way of interacting and communicating. So this is the ladder of leadership from the book. On the bottom, words like, tell me what to do is what the people would say. And the leader says, I'll tell you what to do. So very command and control. I observe this. Here's what you should do against that observation. I think, which is a little bit higher than what I see. And then what do you think? I recommend, which now we're getting into a zone where it's at least processing the information and bringing it, but someone else is still making a decision. I request permission to, it's right in the zone of I've thought it through and here's my action, but tell me to advance. What do you request permission to do? I intend to, which says here's my action. I've done, which means I already did it. And I've been doing it, which is I've been doing it for a long time. So we may come higher on the ladder for things where it's clearly been delegated and we're reporting back in. But that zone of I intend to is one that is an active conversation where we're building leadership by the way that we communicate. So in the book, he talks about listen to the language that people use to identify where they are on the ladder. So where are people and how do they speak? Another thing that's important is if you optimize your decisions for the short term, you'll always end up at the bottom of the ladder. There are some times where we do have to drive for something short term, where we have to shift into a direction mode. But if we stay in the direction mode, then we're staying at the bottom part of the ladder. For some people, if you haven't done this intend to style, or if it feels like, ooh, wow, that's a little push too far, one of the things that he talked about in the book was encouraging this concept of thinking out loud. So, he says, if you limit discussions to crisp orders and eliminate all contextual discussion, you end up with a pretty quiet control room. So thinking out loud makes it easier for the captain to keep their mouth shut, point out risks, and let the plan execute. So one example he gives in the book was he was taking his child driving for the first time, or the child was driving for the first time. And he's pointing out risks, right? Oh, there's a kid over there and there's a car pulling out and don't hit this, right? Because the child isn't thinking out loud and letting him know the process by which they're able to say they've got it under control. If the child in that particular instance was describing what they were seeing and how they were making decisions, like, I see a kid over there, I'm continuing in this direction. I see that car over there and I'm doing this. At the very least, it's creating that open communication loop so that you can observe and decide whether you're going to step in and say something about risk or let the plans execute. So if you guys say, I intend to on a particular thing, and somebody says, let's do it a little bit this way, right? Let's, do that, but add this. Well, there's no negative there because any course correction that would come in response to I intend to, those are irreplaceable ways to establish that common purpose and that clarity on here's what we generally believe here, and here's how we make decisions against guiding principles, like, when there's different factors that affect the decision. Doesn't mean that the way that we've always done it or the way that we've believed something is true can't be challenged, but we have to at least sort of say, where do we generally default to in the way that we make decisions? So even if you say, I intend to do this, and someone gives you a small course correction, nothing negative there. We've learned clarity on common purpose. However, if you say, I intend to, and then somebody says very well and leaves the command center, that raises confidence that you're thinking, you're part of the ability to make decisions. It accelerates our common ability to respond to threats and opportunities because we can't possibly do everything at the same time with how many different projects that we have here, how many different ways that we serve clients, the different bases of this thing. We have to be able to have active leadership in all of the stations of this submarine. And it makes a more fulfilling career for you because you feel like you have the space to create and you are contributing, not just your hands, but your brains in the work.
Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent.